there are times where we have relationships where all that we can do is double down on making sure the way that we show up in the relationship is the correct way. And whether it is being received right away or not by them, let it go. Because sometimes the expectation of like, oh, she still has this issue. Oh, she's still holding on. It will almost like become the issue because you have this expectation that it shouldn't be that way anymore. When in reality, sometimes these things take a while. And I've found power in my life when I just go, hey, how do I need to be showing up day in and day out, agnostic of how they receive it?
Kipp, what's up, man? Great to see you. I've been thinking about this. You know, we've talked about it. I didn't do my morning routine today, and it is amazing how quickly you can get off track and off schedule when you don't do your morning routine. Man, it is powerful.
And you have a crazy Monday. You're like, oh, man.
I know. Well, my mom's been in town, and the kids were here, you know, and the house is chaotic, and all the kids wanted to buzz their heads and bleach them yesterday, and it's fine. It's great, but it is a lot, and now I'm playing catch up. And I've also noticed for myself, I really spend some time reflecting and thinking about how I operate best, and clutter and chaos is my enemy. Oh, my goodness. Like, I cannot have stuff lying around. My bed's got to be made. My car's got to be clean. I don't want trash in the doors, but I think part of it is good, but the other part of it is just my desire to control everything, and I got to let some of that go a little bit. Otherwise, I will literally have a heart attack.
Yeah, we're cut from the same cloth. I struggle with that a lot. That stuff bothers me. I was the kid, I realized this in high school when I couldn't do my homework until my room was clean. My surroundings needed to be addressed for me to sit down and do deep work. Right. Even though back then we didn't call it deep work, but it's like for me to sit down and focus, I had to have an organized surrounding. I'm sure there's some psychological disease or classification for that, but I'm still OCD, the same way. I don't know. Yeah, I'm still the same way. That stuff really bothers me, and it doesn't help when we read a book called Essentialism that helps reiterate that we should probably get rid of all the clutter and all the crap in our lives. I just feel justified when I read that book because I'm like, it's true. All these things bother me, and I need to get rid of them and simplify things.
Well, I think it's like anything. Your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness. And if your strength is organization and focus and a distraction-free environment, and you know that about yourself, and everything has a place. I remember when I was growing up, my mom would say, a place for everything and everything in its place. Yep. That was the phrase around my house. But if it gets to the point where it agitates you or consumes you or makes you a miserable person around other people, which I've certainly been as I'm like cleaning, because like I'll literally follow people around and clean up their crap because I can't deal with it. Or if it's a coping mechanism is something it could be too, where you're not really actually addressing problems. You're just cleaning things, feeling
to feel
productive.
better instead of addressing the issue. Yeah.
Maybe distraction. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, something to consider, but that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, man.
Well, we got some good questions today from both the Iron Council and the Facebook group. Should we jump right into them?
Let's get into it, man. Let's
All
get
right,
after
excellent. All right, Aaron Cobb. I find value in reviewing my life's decisions, almost like an audit, in the context of not dwelling on mistakes, but opportunity costs. Do you ever look back over your life and gauge your success? If so, where do you think either of you would be? Where you would be had you not
where would you
learned?
Be had? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you had not learned into the principles of the Iron Council.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is a foundational element of the battle planning system. You're talking about the after action review. And usually when we talk about the after action review, we're generally addressing it from the macro, what to look for after a 90-day cycle, for example. I don't personally exclusively do that. I'm doing an after action review every single day. And I do an after action review after every conversation, discussion, project, thing, coaching. I mean, you name it. I'm always analyzing my performance. And to his point, you don't analyze your performance to beat yourself up. Too many of us do that. We just analyze it to see objectively, as objective as you possibly can be when you're looking at it yourself, what you can do to improve, where you fell short, how you would tweak your performance in the future, and then generally just get better. So if you're asking where would I be if I didn't have that principle of the after action review inside the Iron Council, I don't know, obviously, but I would not be nearly as far along as I am, and I would be stuck in ruts. I'd be banging my head against the wall and not producing the results that I desire. I would probably be frustrated in life knowing that there was something more or have a feeling for more, but not quite know how to have it. And I think there's a lot of men who are in that same position where they're like the hamster on the wheel, man. They're grinding and grinding and grinding. They're getting up and giving themselves barely enough time to go into work and do work they don't like, but they work hard. And then they're told, well, just work harder if you're not making it. And then they come home and they're in a relationship where they don't communicate and they don't have intimacy or connection. And then they're just frustrated. I've been there. And the key, there are a few keys, but one of the keys is this after action review process. And very simply, it's 5 questions. What did I get done? What did I not get done? What did I do well? What did I not do well? And what will I do better next time? So, for example, my oldest son asked if I'd come help do a little bit of coaching for lacrosse. Now, I don't know a thing about lacrosse, but I know how to read defenses. I understand defense. I can see a field really well. I like the strategy behind it. I have a passion for actually coaching youth sports. And so I was invited to go help this weekend, just run some defensive drills and talk with the boys about pursuits and different kind of checks and when to pursue and when to sit and all the things that go along with the principles of defense in sports. And a lot of it went really well. After the practice session, I reviewed my performance. What did I get done? Well, I taught those boys how to slide better, which is basically synonymous with shifting to help each other out on defense. We had some good conversations about footwork and seeing the entire field. What did I not get done? Well, there was a couple of drills that I had prepared that we just didn't have time to get to. Okay, that's fine. Maybe that's next time. What went well? I feel like I was pretty... I was good with the boys. I know a lot of them anyways, so I was able to build rapport with the boys where there was an added level of trust. What did I not do so well? There was a couple of boys that I noticed, not because of anything I think I said, but they seemed to be the kind of young men who got down and hard on themselves unreasonably quickly. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't aware of that fast enough. So the way that I communicated some things specifically to them could have been done with a little bit more understanding of that. I wasn't rude or anything, but after the practice, I asked my son, he's like, oh yeah, they get down on themselves. I'm like, okay, good. That's good to know. I need to know that about those 2 boys because I need to communicate with them differently. And then what will I do next time? Communicate differently with those boys. Plan the times of the practice out a little better so that I'm hitting all the goals and targets. And the next practice will go better because of that. So there's an example of what that might look like.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the AAR is very much part of my life as well. A little outside of Aaron's question, but I think it's really profound. And I've never made this connection until today, until just now. You know, of late, I've been really pondering on the importance of the power of choice. And how often, and you kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the response to his question, around how so many people are operating in the hamster wheel of life, and they're not making conscious choices around what they're doing. They're doing the job, why? Because they feel like they have to. They're doing the thing at home, why? Because if I don't, my wife, blah. Like, they're not consciously making choices. They're constantly being acted upon by everybody. And when life goes sideways, it's like they're hopeless because they're not owning the decisions that they're making in life. The after action review forces us to take choice. Okay, what did I do? What did I not do well? What am I going to do moving forward? What do you mean, do? I didn't know it was up to me, Ryan. I thought I was just doing what everyone is telling me to do. No, it is really a framework to ensure that you're evaluating, but you're stepping into taking ownership of one's life and making choices moving forward versus just being reactionary to everybody, whether at work or at home. And so I never saw that the AAR did that, but it's totally a framework to drive the importance of choice and intentionality in one's actions.
You know, on that same line too, Kipp, is one thing that we often see in men is their unwillingness to accept responsibility for their situation. And you're talking about that. And what they'll usually do, not usually, but a lot of people, maybe a majority of people, will push off blame and responsibility on others. But what I like about this after action review process is because there's two ends of the extreme. Extreme ownership. I take everything and all of it. It's like, well, hold up. Like there are other factors at play here that are beyond your control. And the other one is take no responsibility whatsoever. I have nothing to do with this. It was all their fault, all that fault, all this.
Yeah.
And it lands somewhere in the middle. So if you're doing an after action review, let's say for a project at work, well, what went well? We hit the deadline. Okay, what didn't go well? We only got 80% of our project achieved. We wanted to do more, build in these features or services, but we couldn't get it. Okay, why didn't that go well? Well, Bob was late on his delivery, and that caused the entire mission to go sideways. Okay, now, here's where it gets valuable, because that might be true. Maybe Bob was late on what he was supposed to deliver, and it messed up everybody else's timeline. Whether you're in tech or construction, we've all been at the mercy of somebody else being late, and then it just ruins everything moving forward. So the last question is, what am I going to do next time? Well, in this case, maybe Bob's no longer invited back on the team. Or maybe you need to clearly communicate with Bob what he needs to do. Or maybe there's some resources that Bob was lacking that if you got those to him, then he would have been able to hit that on time. So I like the after action review because it puts the responsibility on our shoulders, which is where it should be, but it is not ignorant to issues beyond our control or issues that aren't directly our fault, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and it forces all the leaders that like read extreme ownership and they wear it like as a badge. You know, it's like, hey, Ryan, my bad. I'll take ownership of that. It's like, okay, great. That's great. But what are you taking ownership of specifically?
The thing.
All of it. Okay, well, that's not an AAR. The AAR says, what are you going to do moving forward? So it forces us to identify the area of responsibility, not just this blanketed, I take ownership for all things. The other pitch here, based upon the power of AAR, is learning. Have you heard of it's the 70-20-10 rule? That 10% of learning comes from lectures. 20% is informal discussion. 70% is in the work that you're doing. Sure. Most people learn in a heuristic manner in the work that they're doing. And if you're not pausing and going, what went well? What did not go well? What did we learn in the work that we're doing? Then we're leaving a ton on the table for us to learn and grow from. And so it works out perfectly even with just learning models.
Well, and the pausing thing is so crucial. I was playing, just taking some batting practice with my youngest son over the weekend, and he's in this habit of, instead of stepping forward or stepping to the left or stepping to the right based on where the ball is pitched, he always steps back when he swings, always.
So his stance is wider and he moves back and swings?
His stance is fine, but when he swings, that front foot, it steps way back. And so he misses a lot of, because he pulls his bat and he can't reach the ball because he's pulling everything, not just inside pitches, but down the middle and outside pitches.
Got it.
And we were talking about it. He practices, but he practices incorrectly. He has developed muscle memory, and I'm not picking on my son. We all do this.
Yeah.
He has developed muscle memory around doing it wrong, doing it incorrectly. And how many times do we as men do that where we're like, well, this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
This is like, just do it harder. It's like, well, let's stop for a second. Is there an easier way? Is there a different way? I mean, that requires humility, but I've never understood why we just refuse to ask for help or
ego,
get some feedback or look, of course, but look for, but I don't know. Most people would probably disagree, but with my ego statement that I'm going to make here, I want to learn. I want to grow. I'd rather drop my ego, ask some questions, and win at life or whatever I'm doing than just keep doing the same dumb thing over again without producing desired results.
That's crazy. We're crazy. I love this next question. Hunter Locke.
Okay. Yeah, Hunter's back in the Iron Council.
Captain Locke's back in the IC.
Yes, he is.
It's nice to see his name here.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit. Yeah.
If you could only teach your son one principle to live by, what would it be?
I saw this question and I forgot. I was looking at other questions. One thing that I suggested, I think a week or two ago, and this is very much in alignment with what I just said, coachability. Your ability to be coachable, to listen, to learn, to apply, to accept feedback, to look at things critically, to evaluate your performance, to do it differently, do it better. Man, I think the people who are coachable in life are inevitably going to win. And it's all encompassing too, because, some people might say, well, I want him to be a virtuous, righteous person. Of course, sure. But doesn't coachability allow for that? Because if somebody comes to him and says, hey, what you did when you stole from little Timmy was wrong, and here's why it's wrong, then he acknowledges it if he's coachable and says,
growth.
Oh, yeah, that is wrong. I should do better. And here's why it's important that I show up in a different way. So that to me is my knee-jerk reaction, is coachability.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the same exact thing. I thought humility. And I love this concept, if you don't mind me sharing this really quick. I love the term confident humility. You have to be confident enough to try things, to believe that you could figure it out, have a growth mindset, but humble enough to be coachable. And it's the balance of the two. Here's an interesting concept. And if everyone's interested and they're like, oh, I want to know more details, I'll send it to you. Just reach out. The number one contributing factor to increased confidence is gratitude. Number one attribute to increase in humility, gratitude.
Gratitude. Yeah.
Ironic. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the center of both increasing confidence as well as increasing humility is your gratitude. Dealing in reality, where you are, what's good, where you can improve, etc. So confident humility, coachability, those I totally agree. I thought the same exact thing when I read the question.
I like the clarification. Yeah, sure. You're like, I didn't have an answer, so what he said was really good.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I like the concept of confident humility. I'm not a huge fan of like changing words or putting extra words onto things.
Yeah.
But we do have to clarify, to your point, because so many people believe that humility is lacking confidence, or it's the absence of confidence. It's the absence, I would say, of ego or pride or being conceited. But humility, in fact, the way I view humility is that you actually have to be a confident individual to be humble.
Totally. In fact,
insecure people can't be humble.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say most people that are insecure are not humble at all. Yeah.
They can't be. And what does that actually look like in practicality? Well, it means if you're at work and you're not performing the way that you'd like, you turn to the guy who is and you ask him, but you have to be confident enough to ask. That takes courage. And you have to be confident enough that it's not going to undermine who you are. It doesn't speak to who you are. It doesn't make you a bad person or an idiot or any of this kind of stuff. And that requires some confidence to be able to do that. Yeah. But I do like the clarification because, I mean, the alternative to that is just being weak and cowardly. And that's not humility. Nobody would ever describe that as humility.
Yeah.
Like if somebody said to me, and here's a silly example, like, hey, Ryan, where would you like to go to lunch? And I'm just afraid of sharing what's on my mind and speaking up on something as simple as that. If I say, oh, guys, whatever you want, like, that's not that's not me being like serving them. It's me being cowardly.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of rejection. So if I say I want to go to XYZ restaurant, I don't want to get rejected. That's not humility. It's cowardice.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of the word meek, because this is another word that's very similar, right? Is people understand meek as weak when in reality it's just teachable, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
Good to have you back, Hunter. Chad Scott, how do you choose between prioritizing yourself and keeping your word to others? If the time required to prioritize yourself conflicts with the time you have promised to other people, when do you either break your word or put yourself on the back burner?
If I already made the commitment, I think the honorable thing to do is to skip out on your own self-well-being and do what you said you're going to do. If I already made the commitment. Now, sure, there are exceptions to that. You know, if, for example, you know, one of my children has an emergency, but I promised Kipp to go over and help you move this weekend. Sorry, pal. Like, I'm not going to come help you move. Yeah. And you would understand that as a reasonable person, I would think. Totally. So that. There are exceptions, of course. But generally speaking, if you said you're going to do it, do it. And not only is it because your word is your bond and being a man of your word is important, but also because you need to suffer the consequence of mismanagement of time. Yeah. And so if I spend 4 hours helping you move when I had a conflict, Kipp, but I came over and I did it anyways, what I'm going to do next time is remember, oh, yeah, last time I did this, I was frustrated, I was mad, I was in a bad mood, I wasn't as productive, I probably made Kipp feel bad because he knew I didn't want to be there. And it has to sting a little bit, so that I remember the next time somebody asks me for something that conflicts with my own schedule, I'm not so inclined to do it as quickly. So same thing with our kids. I don't want to see my kids suffer, but I'd rather discipline them and have them suffer now in the short term than never learn the lessons for the long haul. Now, as far as prioritization goes beforehand, build your day out first.
Yeah.
Always build your day out first. What's your morning routine look like? Of course, you take into consideration commitments, you know, being with your wife and being available for your kids. Those are commitments that you've already made. So you have to take those into consideration. But build your day out, build your week out, and then you can plug in where appropriate and also learn to say no. That is a very, very difficult thing to do for men because we want to be valuable. We derive our sense of worth from being useful to other people. And so when somebody says, hey, can you help me move? I feel flattered. Not always excited about it, but I'm flattered. You thought I was capable enough to come help you move, or I have the truck and the resources at my disposal that you don't have yourself. That's a flattering thing.
Yeah.
But also, if it's going to conflict with what I need to get done, then it's a no, or it's a different time. So you might make a compromise. If, again, I'm just using the moving thing as a scenario. If you said, hey, Kipp, hey, Ryan, can you help me move on Saturday at noon? Well, let's say hypothetically, I have a prior commitment from noon to 2. Well, hey, Kipp, I can't come at noon. I'm already committed to doing something that's on my schedule. But if it would help, I can come from 2 to 4. Would that be helpful? And so you can make your compromises if what somebody is asking is important, and if they're important to you, then I would say you can compromise that, but don't ever compromise your own schedule outside of those few exceptions that exist.
Yeah, spot on. All right, Jeremy Kofi, what's
Hey,
one
can I say
book?
one other thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I had two friends in the last couple of, 3 or 4 days, talk to me about some marriage issues that they're dealing with. And they reached out to me because I've gone through it myself and might be able to give some context to it. I'm not a marriage expert, but I have some context and maybe some insight based on my own personal experience. And they both wanted to talk about these things after hours, in the evening and then on the weekend. Well, I don't do calls in the evenings. I have games and sports, and I don't do calls on the weekends because that's my time to enjoy the weekend with my kids or, my hobbies and activities. But in these cases, those are two men that I care about, and they're two men who are hurting.
Yeah.
So you better believe I made an exception for my schedule to be available for those two men. And those are some of the exceptions that exist.
Yeah. All right, Jeremy Kofi, what's one book that changed how you show up as a man and one that just made you laugh out loud?
Wild at Heart is my go-to. I know I talk about that all the time, but Wild at Heart is my go-to. As a Man Thinketh is really good. Those are the two that really stand out for the other one. I know this sounds a little self-serving, but kind of an interesting take on this question is my book.
Yeah.
Not because of the content necessarily. It's because it really caused me to think and reflect and articulate and flesh out ideas that I had been talking about up to that point for years. And there were things where I don't even remember what they are, quite honestly, but I do remember the feeling of writing something down and saying, wait a second, do you really believe that?
Yeah.
And I had to find other anecdotes and other research and data to either support it or debunk it.
Yeah.
And it really helped solidify and change some of my own perspective. And I would never wish the book writing process on a human being on this earth. I don't care who it is. It is a miserable, horrible process, but also pretty enlightening.
Yeah. Well, and it played a major role in your development and understanding the principles, right? It forced you to flesh it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also the one that made me laugh out loud because the first iteration I looked at it, I'm like, what the hell? Why is this so horrible?
If you had to pick another book, though, do you have a book that's made you? I don't know if I'm boring. I can't think of a book I've read that I laugh. Maybe that's a bad sign.
I don't think. Are there books that I don't know?
Funny?
I mean, maybe like kids' books or something, or like a book of like dad jokes, maybe.
That's funny.
I have tried to incorporate more fiction into my library, and that's been refreshing. The other thing I did is, Kipp, this is going to be crazy, but when I was doing that training with running for that half marathon, my girlfriend had suggested that I, instead of listening to podcasts, just try listening to music. I'm like, I don't want to listen to music. Like, I want to be productive. And she's like, just listen to music. Like, just enjoy it and have fun and cadence. Yeah. And I did. Yeah. And for a guy who's not big on music, it was a game changer. It really was. It made a huge difference. So I don't know, maybe my personality just lighten up a little bit. I know that about myself for sure.
Yeah. Jeremy, I actually want to know what book you have that makes you laugh out loud, because maybe I need to be reading it. So I sound like I'm just a repeat of you, man, but As a Man Thinketh is probably one of the most profound books I've ever read. I remember the first time I read that book. It was like I was in my 20s, like early career, like early college days. And I remember I had a highlighter pen, and then after like the 5th page, I realized I was just highlighting almost the entire damn book. Yeah. And I was like, okay, got it. Like, this whole book is just amazing. And it really resonated with me. So that would probably be the book on my list.
You know, what I've been thinking about over the past couple of days is how powerful we as human beings are to bring something into fruition that was just electricity firing in these biological cells, it's really fascinating to me. And the past several days I've been thinking, be very careful what you think about. Because what you think about you will start moving towards that. So if you're thinking about like a fulfilling life or goals and dreams and desires, if that's what you're thinking about, you're going to start doing things that are going to, I'm not going to use the word manifest. I don't like that word. But you're going to start doing things a little differently to move into the realization of that dream. But the same is also true. If you start having negative thoughts about people or negative thoughts about work or slipping into vices, you are going to do things, even subconsciously, that are going to move you towards self-actualization. So if you think work is horrible and you hate it and you don't want to be there anymore, you're probably going to get fired at some point because you're doing things that you're maybe not even aware of that make you a miserable person at work. And everybody else is going to start to notice it. They're going to start to acknowledge it. And before long, if you don't leave on your own accord, you're going to be forced out. It's pretty wild.
I love the concept. Like I've heard that concept years ago around self-fulfilling prophecies, right?
Right.
But it logically makes sense, right? If I have a heart at war towards you, Ryan, and I perceive you a certain way, that changes how I interact with you. And because the change of how I interact with you invites you to collude into the very person that I'm placing judgment on. Like you will ask for the very thing that you're looking for. This is why from a leadership perspective, I always state, you have to believe people are not the problem. You have to believe in the individual and never assume they're the problem. Because at the minute you start placing judgment and you assume they're the problem, you'll treat them like the problem. And guess what they'll do? They'll become the problem. They'll literally become the very thing that you're asking them or that you're judging them not to do. It's fascinating. I mean, just walk through that process in your marriage. You're overly, I don't know, you're jealous typing, you're assuming your spouse is cheating on you, so you withdraw from her. You start stonewalling her. She stops being interested in you. Before you know, it's like she's moved on. Why?
See?
Yeah, it's fascinating and all rooted in this sick, twisted state of wanting to be right. And it's so weird. We would rather be right about something than happy. And it's
I'm going to give
so weird.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And I know that's not I'm not saying that's a general statement across the board, but there's a little bit of sick in there. I don't know a better word to call it than sick, but sometimes we are so latched on to being right about something that we will create misery for ourselves. It's fascinating.
I think we can be. I do believe that we can have that. I've had that. We all have.
Yeah.
But I think it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
I believe what it is self-preservation.
Safety. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if you think, for example, you're the jealous type and you think your wife is stepping out on you,
I'm going to withdraw first.
You're thinking that because you're right. You don't want to be rejected. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want the heartbreak that would come with it. I think it's this self-preservation. It was interesting that you brought up marriages because I was looking through some studies just over the past couple of months and I think we talked about this, the Gottman Institute.
I don't remember.
Did we talk about that?
Maybe.
Gottman Institute, they do a bunch of studies and surveys and relationship building things all around romantic relationships, primarily your marriages. And I can't remember the exact statistics or data on this, but there was two things that really stood out to me. One was kind of silly. I didn't think it would be that big a deal. And the other one made a lot of sense. He said, though, they've interviewed thousands and thousands and thousands of married couples, from couples that lasted a year to couples that have, 30, 40, 50 years married. And they said there was two of them. Two of the greatest indicators of long-term success in marriages is one, this was the silly one, the people who kiss their significant other goodbye when they leave for work or wherever they might be going have a greater likelihood of having a longer lasting marriage. That makes sense. I think it's a correlation issue. You know, if you actually care about somebody, you're actually going to tell them I love them and kiss them goodbye.
Or it forces you to get past that little grudge thing from the night before, and you're just like,
yeah. And the other one, this one was really interesting to me, and it said that the partners who stay married the longest are the ones who are quickest to give the benefit of the doubt. And if you can just give the benefit of the doubt and think highly of your partner, then your marriage is going to last longer. And sometimes you don't think highly of your partner because they do something dumb, or they yell at you, or they make a mistake, or whatever. And there are some mistakes that I would say warrant serious consideration. But for the most part, it's your husband forgot to take the trash out in the morning, or you hate the way that your wife chews her food at the dinner table, or, you know, like little silly things that if you let eat you up will, I think, destroy your relationship.
Yeah. Which is really, would you say that correlates to just gratitude?
Yeah, because you're seeing, I mean, maybe partially, but the other part is just you're choosing to be in love with that person.
Yeah.
You know, for example, again, to go back, let's say it's a bad habit. Let's say your wife cracks her knuckles and it just drives you crazy or whatever.
Let's use the food chewing thing. That's enough to end a marriage for me.
I was like, okay, that one's applicable. All right, got it. You know what? I know that's actually a real like condition. It's actually a real condition, is people who can't stand the sound of people chewing their food. But it's usually not that. It's just annoying. Okay, maybe some correction here or there, but at the end of the day, stop. Don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Like, to your point about grateful, be grateful that there's food on the table. Be grateful that you got a woman there and she likes whatever she's eating and you provided it because you brought home the paycheck. I like what you said now that we're hashing it out a little bit. Have some gratitude and stop focusing on that, or even laugh at it.
Yeah.
Maybe it just becomes funny and it's like, you know, it's never going to change. And I don't care at this point because it's not a deal breaker for me. And so we just laugh about it and we tease each other about it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But those are choices that I think human beings can make and should make if they want a long-term relationship. Finding a person who will do that and being that kind of person to your partner.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Stephen Rager, what made you switch from not journaling to journaling? What have you found to be some of the benefits now that you are a journaling? I don't know. I don't understand the last part. Okay.
Just heartbreak. Like, just
that was the switch.
Being miserable, you know, and just
getting your thoughts out and
not having really like very many people I thought I could turn to. And even the ones I could, I didn't ever want to like bombard them all the time with all my thoughts any given day. That's not sustainable or even respectful to somebody in your life. But I had to find a way to get it out. I think the problem when we don't get these thoughts out is they just bouncing around in our brain as an echo chamber, and they become worse and bigger. It's like a snowball. When you put a snowball at the top of the hill and you roll it down, it's going to start picking up speed and it's going to pick up other snow. And when it gets down to the bottom of the hill, instead of being 6 inches around, it's now 5 feet wide. It's a way bigger problem because we just let it roll on and bounce around in our brain. And I have a tendency of doing that. I tend to be more of an anxious attachment style. I'm a verbal processor personally, so it's best, and I process quickly too. So it's best for me to vocalize my thoughts, which is part of the reason I really like doing this podcast, because I can vocalize my thoughts.
Totally.
And in the absence of being able to vocalize it, journaling has proven to be pretty valuable. And usually when I write it down, it diffuses whatever I'm feeling or experiencing, and it makes it a little bit more objective rather than subjective. And I'm less likely to take it as personal and just look at it as
more logical
data points or information that will help me improve my life. And I've also had lots of scenarios where I write it down. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is silly. Like that is a silly thing to be bothered by or upset with, and that's great because we all have a tendency of getting worked up.
Yeah. Well, that's the benefit of conversations with people. How many times has that happened where you go have a conversation with a buddy, you say it out loud and you're like, yeah, okay, got it. Like you don't even need to say anything. Like now that I said it, I already know what I need to do. Or that was dumb and silly. But it's weird until then. It's all meaningful and it's all so serious in our own heads until we put it back on paper or in a conversation. It's crazy.
You know what's also interesting about it too is I go back through my journal periodically, and so I've looked at entries from a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I'm like, that's what I was worried about? It gives me a perspective. You know, when you're in the middle of something tragic, something difficult, something challenging, it's not easy to like see a longer term perspective on it.
It's really weird. Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, whatever you're going through, I don't want to be dismissive of serious issues, but for the most part, the issues that we're dealing with, financial constraints, breakdowns in relationships, job loss, like that stuff will get better, but it doesn't feel that way when you're going through it.
Yeah. That's why I love that analogy. Have you heard that? It's hard to see the label when you're in the jar.
Oh, I have. Yeah, I have seen that.
I don't know, for whatever reason that resonates with me. Cause I'm like, it's so true. When you're in that jar, it's hard. It's really hard to see the label on it. It's crazy.
You know what else is cool though about the journaling thing is, let's say you're going through a relationship issue right now. Well, this isn't the first time you ever went through that. So you can actually go back into your journal and find the time where you were dealing with that from before and actually look at it as a very powerful tool for improvement and getting through the hard times because you've done it before.
Yeah.
So you know you're capable of doing it. And there might be some pointers in there that you need to remind yourself of that you learned 2 or 5 or 10 years ago to apply today.
Yeah. Yeah. Elijah Elliott, what are some common signs that you might be overworking ourselves without realizing it? How can we tell when we're pushing ourselves too hard and need to slow down?
When men are overworked, they do one of several things. They become irritable, they become agitated, they become impatient, and they start to disengage and isolate. So if you've noticed, or even somebody else, maybe you haven't noticed it, maybe somebody else in your life has noticed that you are more irritable than before, you might be overworked. You might be burnt out, or at least getting there. If you notice yourself disengaging from certain activities, certain people, that's a concern that there's an issue in the relationship or in the project that you're working on. And those things need to be addressed. But yes, when you're agitated, irritated, distant, distracted, maybe even procrastination, those are all warning signs of being burned up and burned out.
What's your advice? You know, so you get present to it, and then what?
Yeah, then you have to go through your schedule and figure out what needs to go. And you need to set boundaries. So you might have 17 trips planned this year. It feels like that's what I have planned. And you might need to go in. I had a conversation this morning with somebody and said, I'm not going to do that this year, actually. And I feel bad. Like, I actually want to go do that thing. Yeah. And I don't want to let that person down. But I cannot do it if I want to maintain my sanity. So you go through your schedule and you look at what you're doing, what you've committed to doing. It might just be a season, right? So maybe in 2 weeks you have a thing coming up and you're so stressed out about it. Okay, well, get through the thing and then don't take on any more when the thing is done if you're already committed to doing it. But you just need to look at your schedule, find out how you're spending your time, your resources, your energy, because it could be financially related too. You could feel like you're not making ends meet because you're just spending all sorts of money that you shouldn't be spending. Then you need to look at the budget.
Yeah.
Look at your resources, figure out where the pull is, what's causing that, and eliminate. I would say check off. Some things, just getting them done is going to feel better. So get it done. Check off things that you've got done. Eliminate things that don't need to get done. Delegate other things and stop saying yes to so much.
Yeah. I feel like my biggest issue, and I've shared this before, but like my biggest issue is that I think today's the exception. And after all these things I need to get done today, tomorrow will be, not as critical, or next week or whatever. And I realize like a lot of the stuff that I've prioritized aren't that critical. They're not that important. And if I don't prioritize and put things in the rightful place today, then I never will. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow's not going to be any easier. Next week's not going to be any easier. And I have to do it today. And so maybe, Elijah, maybe operate the same way I do. Don't fall into that trap, because it's never going to be ending. It's never going to end. Some of the chaos and the busyness,
Not only is it not going to be better tomorrow, it's going to be worse, because you're not doing the skills required to have a different type of life. I'm reminded of when people win the lottery. I think the average of the amount of time people lose in the lottery is 4 to 5 years. They win and then they lose everything they won in a matter of 4 to 5 years.
It's so crazy.
And what we tend to think, and you'll hear this from a lot of people, even in housing, for those who are less fortunate, let's say, well, just give everybody a house. That's not the problem. Yeah. Just like giving a broke person $10 million is not going to solve the issue. They didn't address the problem. The problem with their finances is financial literacy. The problem with the house might be financial literacy. It might also be drug abuse, things like that, mental illness.
Yep.
There's things that need to be addressed.
There's reasons why they don't
first.
have that money. Yeah.
Right. And if you give it to everybody, they'll lose it as quickly as you gave it to them, because they have not earned the right to the thing. And so if you're overwhelmed today and you think, well, tomorrow or next year or this will be better, why will it be better? It'll be worse. Not only did you not learn the new skills, you actually compiled all the things from today and the rest of the 364 days of your life onto the same day next year. So it'll actually be twice as worse next year if you don't correct the behavior now.
Yeah. It's crazy. All right. Will Luna, we're going to jump over to Facebook. Will Luna.
Let's take a couple on these, Kipp, just for time, for the sake of time.
Yeah, sounds good. How to earn back trust of your children when you've broken it. I messed up and I have owned it. However, my daughter is still holding it against me 4 months later. Any insight would be beneficial.
Yeah, and I asked some clarifying questions, and he clarified on here. So since he clarified, I'm assuming he's okay with us sharing it. I think he had a situation with his daughter where she was maybe giving some back talk or running her mouth or doing something. Yeah. And I think he said to put his hand over her mouth and told her to shut up, or it was something like that, right?
Yeah.
Stop running your mouth, I think is what he said. Yeah, that's rough, man. Obviously, you know that you should not have done that. And we've all done things like that. This is not the end of the world, and you're not an abusive person. I think you just got overheated, just like I have, just like all of us have. And I would say the first thing is you need to be very clear about it, and it sounds like you have, to apologize. It also sounds like your daughter moved back home on a full-time basis with her mom, your ex, so now you're not seeing her as much. And I'm actually going through a similar thing with my daughter. And I wish I could tell you I have all the I wish I could tell you I had any answers. But it's hard, and I lost a lot of trust with the kids over the past couple of years just based on my own circumstances. And, my daughter's been the hardest.
Yeah.
So far. And the things that I'm trying are to be more engaged, to be more patient with her, because I'm not as patient with her as I could be. So that's going to be a big thing. To be more understanding of what she's going through, to listen better to what she has to say. I'm learning that all kids just want to be heard and seen, like their voice matters, like they're an important component of the family. So I don't have answers for you other than be diligent, be steadfast, be patient. Let's try not to lose our temper again. That goes for me too.
Yeah.
And let's find out what they're interested in, communicate with them appropriately and how they want to be communicated with. Don't cross over boundaries that she might have right now. You might really want to push the issue. Don't. Just sprinkle it in on occasion. But also don't lose any opportunity for fun together. I think in times like these, at least I do, have a tendency of taking everything way too seriously, and then I end up driving greater wedges between me and other people. Serious conversations need to take place, of course, but also be lighthearted and have fun and joke and play and do fun things together outside of the other conversations that will inevitably need to take place. But yeah, she's got her walls up. And so it probably wasn't this one issue. It was probably the thing that pushed everything else over the edge. And I would also spend some time thinking about what are the other issues, the underlying issues, not the putting your hand over her mouth and telling her to stop running her mouth. There's probably more to it. And I'd question whether or not you've considered or contemplated what that might be.
Yeah. You know, I'm picking this up a little bit in Will's question, and maybe this is more broad, right, for a bigger issue. But there are times where we have relationships where all that we can do is double down on making sure the way that we show up in the relationship is the correct way.
Yeah.
And whether it is being received right away or not by them, let it go. Because sometimes the expectation of like, oh, she still has this issue. Oh, she's still holding on. It will almost like become the issue because you have this expectation that it shouldn't be that way anymore. When in reality, sometimes these things take a while. And I've found power in my life when I just go, hey, how do I need to be showing up day in and day out, agnostic of how they receive it? Whether they trust me, love me or not, how do I need to be showing up? And I just do that and write it and find satisfaction, maybe find some, I don't know, momentum in the fact that I'm at least doing my part well and realizing that things just take time and letting go of the expectation of where she's at and realizing that will come on her own terms. At her own timeline, and it may not meet your expectations, and that's okay. You just keep doing your part.
That's it. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
I'll share just a personal story. And last night I took the family out to dinner, and like I said, my daughter and I have been struggling in our relationship.
Did you shave her head as well yesterday?
I did, and I'm like, keep it up, keep running your mouth, and we're going to keep doing this. I don't mean to make light of the situation. Sometimes that helps me, so I'm not making light of your situation. But I asked her, I said, hey, like, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I asked her if she was okay, and she said, yeah, I'm okay. I said, you don't seem okay. That's why I'm asking. And she said something that stung, but it was a little bit of a breakthrough. She said, I don't like talking with you about my problems. I don't like to hear that. Like, that's not a thing I want to hear. But I was like, okay. And I think in a moment of clarity, I decided I'm not going to push on this actually right now. I'm not going to ask her why and grill her because she just said she doesn't like talking about it.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying, well, why? What's the problem? Like, that's talking about it, and she doesn't want to do that. And I think in a moment of clarity last night, a very brief moment of clarity, I said, hey, you know what? You're allowed to feel like that. I can understand that. There's been times where I haven't wanted to talk with my parents or friends, whether it's because of something personal or because I'm mad. So I understand that. I can see that. And that's it. And that's the only conversation we had right there. And then we had fun. You know, we had dinner, we were at a hibachi grill, and we enjoyed ourselves, and it was great. That part stung a little, but it was good because she'd never said that before. Usually what she says is, nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong. Yeah. This time she said, I don't like talking with you about my problems. That to me is movement in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, and the probability, because you handle that way, the probability of her feeling like she can talk to you about problems just increased because she just gave you a stinger and you handled it well.
Right.
Right. Which is great. Yeah. All right. Last question for Chris. He's just curious about your hunting trip to Texas.
Oh, yeah. It was a good hunting trip. We didn't see a lot of pigs, unfortunately, but got it done on the second day. I was with some friends. I was with Jeremy, Jay, and John is who I was with. And
that's funny.
we had a good time. Yeah. And then Greg Ray, him and I were sitting in the blind together on the second morning, and 2 pigs came out. And it's so crazy. I was out there for 4 or 5 days, and we put 3 or 4 hours in the stands morning and then another 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. So it's like 6 to 8 hours every day for 5 days of sitting. And I shot 1 pig, and it happened. The pig came out and was out probably for 45 seconds before I shot it. Shot it. Another pig came out behind it. It was a sow. They were both sows. I took the bigger of the 2 sows. Shot the one. I shot her in the head. She dropped right where I shot her. And the whole thing took 50 seconds, a minute, maybe tops.
But it took a week leading up to the 50 seconds. Yeah.
So that was good. You know, it was good. Let's see. Jay and Jeremy both got a pig, and Johnny, unfortunately, he didn't even see a pig the entire time.
That's tough.
Which was tough. But yeah, we go with an organization, a good friend of mine. His name's Greg Ray, but he owns a company called From Field to Table. And if you guys want to look into getting into hunting, it is a great option for getting into it because all the firearms are provided. We do firearms, long range, 0-hour rifles in on day 1, that afternoon that we get there. All the food, all the lodging is included. And then when we kill our animals, we actually have a professional chef, and he teaches us how to break the animal down properly, what cuts are what, how to cook the cuts. And then on the last night, we actually help. In this case, we didn't do it this time, but normally we help prepare the meal and present it to each other. It's a really cool way to do a hunt, especially I think if you're a brand new hunter and you want to get into it. This is a very professional, well-run event that's going to give you a high probability of success and of learning.
That's cool. What was the range on your pig?
Distance? 90 yards. I mean, it's fairly close.
And you're in like a tree stand, like an elevated stand of some sort?
No, this one, a box blind. So if guys don't know what a box blind is, it's what it sounds like. It's just a box. It's about 6 feet by 5 feet, and it's got window slats all the way around. And we're about, I'd say 80 to 90 yards. And I made a really good shot. I was really happy with my shot because on pigs, they're so tough. If you shoot them behind the shoulder like you might with a deer, for example, the rate of you finding a pig drops relative to finding a deer, even if you make a good shot behind the shoulder.
Got it.
They don't bleed much. They go forever. They're tough as nails. And deer are too. Deer, like animals are incredible. They really are. So Greg teaches us to shoot the pigs in the head because they just either you miss or they drop. Yeah. And also you get to preserve more meat. Rather than hitting them in the shoulder, you're going to blow out their shoulder or ruin some meat. So this way it preserves more meat too.
That's cool. That's really cool. I love that.
It's a good time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a good time. Yeah.
All right. Wrap up. I mean, what's our call to action, sir?
I would say we've got about 60 people coming out to the event in May 1st through the 4th. We have tickets left, so if you're interested, we made some changes that I think are actually going to be good changes because it's a more intimate, close type event as opposed to having more and more people there. So I was a little disappointed in that with some things that happened with the event, but I'm also pretty optimistic and excited about the guys that are coming because I think we're just going to put together a better event because of it. So that's May 1st through the 4th. We still have tickets. If you go to themensforge.com, you can get signed up for that. So that's themensforge.com.
And as always, connect with Michler on X and Instagram at Ryan Michler. It's good, man. It's good to have you back. I mean, I love Sean, but it's always good to chat with you. Yeah.
Sean's great, man. Yeah, I'm so grateful for you and for him being able to come in and fill in when I'm absent and for you just being steadfast. Just being here every single week.
I'm the reliable one for now.
You are, man. You are. No, I appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, that's it. We'll be back Friday, for our Friday field notes. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.